Hello, good afternoon, good morning for some of you. Welcome to the Removing the Chaos from Your Marketing Strategy webinar, the January installment of the complimentary Atticus Advantage series. So today, I will be proctoring, as it were. My name is Jeff Hines. I am a client service advisor with Atticus. I joined a few years back in early 2016. I do a lot of front-end engagement, so guiding attorneys through Atticus programs, coordinating their early participation, and also staying with them as they go through programs, making sure they have the support they need. Before coming on board with Atticus, I was a national account executive in the AV equipment industry for trade shows and a videographer in the construction industry. So about Atticus. Atticus was founded in 1989 to provide in-depth, ongoing support and accountability programs for attorneys and firms that effectively increase gross revenues, reduce stress and the number of hours in the office, develop greater career satisfaction, and allow more free time for family and personal interests. During the course of the webinar today, you may have a question that comes to mind, and we certainly encourage you to ask that to our co-presenters. Use the chat function on your GoToWebinar dashboard to send a message to me. If you want it to remain anonymous, no problem. Just indicate so in the message. So one of the tools that our co-presenters will touch upon today is the practice growth diagnostic. This is the best way for attorneys to begin engaging with Atticus. There are three components to it. The first is a focused DISC advantage. This is a perception profile. DISC is simply an acronym. It stands for dominance, influence, or steadfast, and competency or compliance. It's essentially, we all demonstrate or exhibit each of these dimensions to a certain extent, and the advantage is measuring a given attorney's dimensions to see where they fall on the DISC spectrum. The second component is a practice assessment, which is a survey that takes four foundational elements of practice growth: time management, marketing, cash flow, and staffing, breaks them down into a series of rateable questions from 1 to 5. The attorney completes them prior to the call, and everyone comes in with all of that information in mind. And the call, by the way, is the third component, the advisor growth analysis. Phone call that usually lasts about an hour. Most of it has to do and talks about goals, the attorney's practice, and how those four foundational elements currently look as they stand now, and how they could look given some systemization. And at the very end, the advisor provides the three most impactful actions for the attorney to focus on after the call, and also recommends how they see Atticus best being able to assist in practice growth. There's also an online element to the practice growth diagnostic. If you want more information, you're welcome to visit, and we encourage you to visit atticusadvantage.com. You can simply click on Let's Get Started and even schedule your own practice growth diagnostic that way. So with that all being said, let's get to the main presentation, Removing the Chaos from Your Marketing Strategy. And I'll hand it over now to the first of our co-presenters, Denise Gomez.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here today. I appreciate everybody joining us today. Just a little background on me. I've been with Atticus over 6 years, and I love my job because I have the best members. They're complete game changers in the industry. It's great working with business owners who are innovators. And actually, one of the most rewarding things I get to do working with these attorneys across the country is help them take time away from their practice. So the importance of getting away from it all and kind of working on your practice, not in your practice. And so I get to get them away from their practice, give them time off, and help them relax. Joining us today is a longtime Atticus member, Richard West. He's a great friend of mine. So I've invited him here today because he's one of those game changers that I mentioned. He's gone from a solo practitioner to becoming one of the most sought after family law attorneys in Florida. And he's grown his firm successfully while taking significant time off, thanks to implementing systems and building that marketing machine that he has. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here, and always exciting to introduce people to Atticus who haven't had the benefit of the culture that it creates in your law firm. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Well, let's get to the meat of it then. We're going to start with talking about your law firm. If you go ahead and shift there, Jeff. How your law firm is a gold mine. It's filled with rewards. Often, though, there's a fatal flaw in the way most attorneys build their practices, and that can negatively impact income. So the flaw is having a mindset of, if I understand the legal work, then I must understand how to run a business. And so they don't think about marketing as an important tool in building their business and their profitability. Today we're going to challenge you to rethink your practice, rethink your role in your practice, and challenge the description of who your clients are. So I want you to write this down if you have a pen and paper. Your marketing machine is at least as important as your legal work. So your marketing machine is at least as important as your legal work.
There's no question about that, Denise. We all have experience with lawyers who are really great lawyers but are struggling to make a living, working way too hard, not making enough money, stressed and unhappy. Yet, from everything we can see, they really know how to be a lawyer.
Yeah, you can be a great lawyer, but we really need you to be a great business owner as well. So how do we get you there? Well, there's 4 foundations of practice growth, and they're very key, and they do tie together. So it's important to have all 4 of these foundations or cornerstones, because if one is weak, your foundation for growth won't hold you, and you'll either collapse under the growth or you won't grow at all. So they are the time management, client development and marketing, building the great team, and understanding cash flow and profitability, and how that's key to building your business. These all impact your revenue, your take home, how much control you have over your life, so freedom to take a vacation, and freedom to do the things you love. And Richard, you can speak to this. The most common thing we hear when we're talking to attorneys and we're like, what do you like to do outside of your office? And it's, I used to ride my bike. I used to enjoy going boating. And so they've kind of given up the things they like to do outside of the office.
And,
so,
I'm sorry, Denise, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one of Mark's great quotes is make your practice serve your life, not your life serve your practice. And that's so simple, but so powerful in terms of having the kind of life that you want. The bar, I don't know where everybody on the seminar is from, but it seems like even nationwide, the bar seems to be talking about mindfulness. And we need to be mindful about these four foundations, and not just being that good lawyer, the E-myth that if we understand the technical part of our business, we understand our business. So this is what we're going to learn to build some mindfulness around in order to get us the life that we want.
Exactly. And everything with intention. You have to be intentional about your marketing plan and be intentional about how you're managing your time. And so we're going to talk about time. We're going to start with the time management foundation. And why is it so important to have good time management for effective marketing? I hear it a lot, with attorneys I speak with. They just don't have time to market, or they market and business comes in the door and they don't have time. Then they lose their time to market because they get too busy. And it causes this porpoising effect, like a dolphin in the water, where you market, you get busy, you can't do the marketing anymore, so then business falls off, and that creates hiccups in your pipeline and cash flow. We actually have a book written by Atticus co-founders Mark Powers and Sean McNallis called Time Management for Attorneys. And the most common thing I hear is, yes, I bought the time management book, but I haven't had time to read it. And so we want to make sure that you learn some tips and techniques to create, good, effective time management in your office so that you have time to do everything else. We don't want that stop and go marketing because it'll create stop and go revenues. Richard, did you have a key breakthrough when you started with Atticus with time management?
Well, I think the first breakthrough was the time template that's introduced in the book you just mentioned, Denise, and worked through, and getting my staff to follow it. The other big breakthrough, I'm sure we're going to get to somewhere here today, was the planning aspect of it, and the ability to take a power hour and to focus your attentions. And then my last breakthrough, at least for me on time management, was my daily checklist, or what Atticus calls the daily focuser checklist. So those were things to me, and we were just talking before the seminar started about how when I get away from the basics, that's when my life goes awry. As long as I stick with these fundamental concepts, everything's real good, and it does start with time management. You know, as I said, sometimes you get so busy chopping wood, you don't have time to sharpen your axe. It's always more important to sharpen your axe.
Exactly. And the fundamentals, they're so key. It's like a golf swing. If you have a breakdown in your fundamentals, your golf swing's not going to be as strong. And so the fundamentals are so important to go back to and make sure that you're following these. So how do you manage your interruptions? We say there's really no way to manage time. You can only manage yourself. And so what are some great tips on how to do this? The first thing you have to do is take charge, because you're the first line of defense for you. You might want to write these down too if you have paper and pen, because these are going to be good to remember. So take charge, go public. Make sure that your office understands what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's going to help them and you be more efficient. Some tips for that, a lot of times your interruptions come from three areas. So it's staff walking in your door, client calls, or emails. And so the first thing you can do with your staff is when you get in the morning is hold a huddle with them, get a team huddle together, answer their questions, but make sure it's like 10 or 15 minutes, answer any questions, assign their tasks for the day, and have them batch their questions. So hold another one maybe in the afternoon for any questions that come up throughout the day, but it'll keep them from walking in your office and interrupting you. And then Richard just mentioned the power hour. And so, go in your office and close the door and be very direct that you're not to interrupt me unless my house is on fire. It has to be a true emergency to interrupt me right now. And that's your time to go through your emails and get through, any kind of production work that you need to get done, billable hour work. And the client calls, create a script for your staff. And it can be as simple as, Richard's not available right now, but he's returning calls today between 1 and 2 o'clock. Is there a window in that hour that works for you? The client's going to feel very taken care of. They know when you're going to call them back. You're protected because you don't get interrupted. And the staff is protected by the script. And so, it's a safe win-win for everybody to do that. And if you need a visual reminder, the reason you want to get home on time at night, put a picture up on your desk. If it's your family you want to get home to, if it's something that you used to love doing that you don't have time to do anymore, put a picture of you on a hike, a picture of you on a boat. So whatever that visual reminder is that will help you adhere to these tips. Sometimes we hear attorneys worry, well, I don't know how my staff's going to take to that. I don't know how they'll react. It's too much of a culture shift. Richard, did you find your staff was pushed back when you started making changes?
No, I think they appreciated it because I invited all of them to do exactly the same thing: is figure out when your power hour is. Don't be a slave to interruptions, unless they come from me, of course. But we try to get them thinking in the same line to manage their efficiencies and manage their time. The other source of interruptions, Denise, is yourself. It's pretty easy for us to get distracted. So one of the tips I'd like to pass along to those who aren't already doing it is don't leave your email up and running all day long. Certainly turn off the audio alarm for it, the little pop-ups, and then set yourself time, once or twice a day to go through it and process your inbox. We do an exercise in our DYM program called Inbox to Zero. And when you learn how to properly process your inbox and stay on top of it, it becomes the useful tool that it should be, instead of the source of frustration and irritation that it is for so many people that I talk to.
Yeah, having that many emails, and I spoke with someone the other day. She said, I have 2,400 emails in my inbox right now, and the oldest one was from 2014. And I was like, it's a toleration. You start tolerating these emails, and we have tolerations in our life anyway that cause us stress. We may not even realize it's causing us stress. But when you can get your inbox to zero, it really will take away some of that dauntingness of the email bully. We call it the email bully. And there's 4 tactics for handling emails too. So in your power hour, if you start with your emails, there's 4 Ds. So it's do it. So if you can answer the email in under 2 minutes, do it. If it's not the highest and best use of your time, delegate it. If it's not time sensitive, delay it. And if it's an ad, or, we all are on these listservs and different charities and boards, just delete it. If it's not something that's important to you, just delete it. And what we end up doing is we'll build folders and move all of the emails to those folders. So when you're delaying it, or if you need to save it, it goes into a folder and comes out of your inbox.
Now, the second half of that exercise there is making sure you set aside time to get back to the things that you have delayed. And so you do it with intention, once or twice a week, or set aside time on a daily basis if you have that luxury to handle your action items.
Yep. And the reason this is all important to manage your interruptions, the average interruption is about 10 minutes. So if you think you have 6 interruptions a day, then that's an hour. So place the value on that hour. What is that value to you, the hour that you've lost? It could be an hourly rate. It could be, again, not getting home on time. You missed your child's soccer practice. Place that value and remind yourself why these tips are so important. Let's move on to staff. So we talked about one of the 4 cornerstones foundation is having a great team. And so your team really should be great marketers as well. And why is that important? You don't really think about your team as part of your marketing strategy, but they are. They're usually the front line of interaction with prospects and clients. If your prospect or existing client has a bad experience, you'll never really receive referrals from them. So you have to remind your team that they are constantly marketing your firm for you, with everyone who comes in the door, with everyone who calls in. Richard, over the years, you've been able to build this great team, and this is one reason Richard can take 175 days off every year. So talk about how you did that and the importance, and how did you relay it to your team that marketing is an important part of their job.
Well, I got to tell you, Denise, this was, of the 4 foundational elements, I thought this was the most challenging. It sure didn't start off as a great team, and there's been a lot of people who've left the team over the years. And when you finally get a good team together, the difference is remarkable. And so the effort has to be put in at the front end. And as the Atticus book says, hire slowly and fire fast. Especially family lawyers, I think a lot of us being people persons tend to adopt their employees instead of hiring them. And so you got to decide what you need first of all. If you're working with a team and you have a discordant element, somebody who's really causing problems with the rest of the team, get rid of them. Bite the bullet. Do it. In a lot of the Atticus groups that I've been part of over the years, it's amazing how often we see people come back year after year with the same complaint about a staff member, and they don't do anything about it. So if you find yourself spending an inordinate amount of time trying to deal with one staff person, get rid of them. So that was the first part of it. Don't keep them too long. The second is consistent message and training, core values, and make them feel like they're part of something bigger than just their job. Reward them. It doesn't have to be necessarily monetary, but with recognition. I'll never forget when I first learned this lesson. One of my paralegals stuck a document on my desk, And it really was a very good job. And I just took a sticky note and wrote "good job" on it with an exclamation mark when I gave it back to her. And 2 weeks later, she still had that little "good job" sticky note attached to her monitor. So, reward behavior that you want repeated, and also reward people making mistakes and taking ownership of them and coming to them. The last thing you want is to believe your team is doing something that they're not doing, or have made mistakes that you could fix if you knew about them because they're afraid to come to you about it. So that's the two things that I would say are key in training them. Great marketers, they have to be customer service oriented. We did one of our firm retreats some years ago at the Ritz-Carlton just because I wanted my team to experience Ritz-Carlton quality of service. People at Ritz don't say thank you, they say my pleasure. Everything is geared towards that experience, and I think my crew now does a great job of that.
Okay, perfect. Again, we're going to go to the next slide because there's some more reasons why this is so important, that every person on the team is always marketing you and your firm. And Richard mentioned the Hire Slow, Fire Fast. It's another book written by Mark Powers and Sean McNellis, but it is really key because it's going to have a direct impact on your profitability. The first time a prospect calls your firm to when you wrap up their case, their experience will determine, if they're going to become a referral source for you. If you have someone who answers the phone with a friendly and professional demeanor and a team that is committed to the client's best interest, they'll have a great experience and they're going to tell others. Keep in mind, if they have a poor experience, they're going to tell others that as well. So if you have that toxic team member, they can truly destroy a client's experience in your office. Whether you're a great attorney or not, or you did a great job for them, they're going to remember that your receptionist was grumpy, or that they weren't friendly to, when they walked in the office, your staff wasn't friendly to them. Another way to increase the marketing and the team, having the team involved in it, if you have case management software, it's a great marketing tool, and it will help with your client experience as well. Especially, it seems like with family law, contact with your clients can be drawn out, waiting for a trial date or a mediation date, or different things happening. So you can set a task reminder to have one of your team members check in with your clients from time to time. If you're going to go 3 or 4 weeks without having contact, there's so many things happening during a divorce or a family matter that can include children and just really big stressors. So knowing that you cared enough to have someone check in will go a long way. And it's really not the highest and best use of your time as the attorney. So that's why I said have a staff member check in with them and make sure everything's going okay, and just maybe update them and say, just wanted to remind you that, we're going to have this mediation in 2 weeks. I just want to see how you're doing. Do you need anything from us? Something simple like that. And the third thing is have fun with it. Keep everything into perspective when you're marketing and building the team and having your team become those marketers for you. So let them have a little bit of fun with it. Richard, anything here that you see?
No, I think we pretty much covered that. The have fun part is a little more challenging in a family law practice when people are going through a bad time in their lives. So you want to try to encourage that with them and not let their poor mood drag you or your staff down. Because again, it really is about enjoying what you do, and so that have fun sounds simple, but it's not, and keep some focus on that.
Okay. So another cornerstone is cash flow and profitability, and this can be a big challenge for a lot of attorneys. I hear a lot of times, well, I'm not really sure what my revenues were, and I haven't gotten a report back from my CPA yet, and so you're not really paying attention to this, but marketing is obviously going to directly impact your cash flow and your profitability. And there's a big difference between revenues and being profitable. And so understanding that is key, because you want to understand what marketing tools that you're using that are being effective for you and ones that are not being effective for you and maybe impacting. As an example, if you add case management software, that's going to hit your cash flow, but it will help create profitability in the long run. And so that's a good investment. Other times, people will advertise and you'll spend thousands of dollars advertising, but you're not getting the qualified leads. And so that's why you want to track the leads coming from anything you're doing. You'll end up sometimes generically advertising and you'll end up with unqualified leads or tire kickers, people who really can't afford you. And we're going to talk a little bit about identifying your A client and who that is. And so you want to make sure that your marketing is intentional, creating profits for you with the clients that you truly want to work with.
Atticus gave me a great tool on this. Mark called it the dashboard. He says, you wouldn't really try to drive your car without a dashboard that tells you, how fast you're going, how much gas you have, whether your engine's overheating, maybe an odometer, how far you're going. How do you run a business without having some metrics to measure it? So those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept of a business dashboard, I'm sure, Denise, that you could direct them towards the online resource in the Atticus website for it. I really encourage that. If you're working 1,600 hours a year and only getting paid on 1,000 of those, there's something dramatically wrong. If your associates are working 1,600 hours a year and writing off a large portion of it, there's something dramatically wrong. And so until you know what the situation is, you can't fix it. You can't change it. So that's really important, is to have the ability to keep your finger on the pulse of the lifeline on your business. We're selling our time or our services in exchange for money, and it's dollars in the door. It's not just hours billed. So you have to have some way of tracking that. Most good case management software will do that for you.
Absolutely. And for those of you on the call right now, we are going to have people following up with you after this webinar. So if you heard a form that Richard mentioned or that I mentioned and you want to get a copy of that, just let us know and we can email that to you. So why does your firm's client development matter, and how do you know if you're doing it right? And this is one of the big reasons I brought Richard into this today, because he is a marketing rock star. So I just kind of like to have you explain how you became that. How did you develop your marketing strategy and do it with intention, and kind of explain how that process worked for you?
Well, again, all credit to Mark and Atticus. I've been working with Mark since before he was called Atticus. It was Mark Powers Consulting when the main focus was on marketing. So again, it was the metrics. The first thing he had me do was begin to track where my work was coming from. And then you hone down a little more and determine where your quality work was coming from. While it was very flattering to get referrals from our local judges, I quickly began to realize that what they were referring to me was mostly, their housekeepers or their mechanic or their yard man or something like that, and they were not the type of clients that could afford my services. And at the same time, it's difficult when you get called by a judge locally and say, would you talk to so-and-so? So the next step in that whole process was setting a large enough consultation fee to act as your initial line of defense. And that was a step in and of itself, but one I'm really glad I took. And I always encourage people who don't charge for their consultations to charge, and charge well, because it may be the most important. I spend 2 hours in an initial consult. I don't feel like I can do a thorough one in less, and I charge well for it. Then you move to the place when you begin to realize that your doors are going to stay open and you're not going to have to take anything that comes in, to begin to think about what your A client looks like. Are they in my line of work? Are they male or female? What profession or occupation are they in? Are they reasonable? Am I their second or third lawyer? How did they treat my staff? Did they work within my systems, or did they want to control the way things go, i.e., by not filling out my client intake form, for example, or giving the staff a hard time about paying a consultation fee? These are warning signs to me. And so you begin to develop over time what your ideal client looks like. And again, if you're regularly marketing, you're going to have all the work you need, all the clients you want, and so you can pick and choose. In the last 6 months, I've had occasion to turn down 2 very large and what would have been lucrative cases, and one of them I actually brought my staff in making the decision, and everybody was in agreement that this person was going to cause us nothing but grief. And so we declined, and it really feels good. The other thing we've done over the years is, and this was before we had honed and defined our client intake systems, we would, once a month, I'd let the staff pick who our worst client was, and we would fire them and have a little celebration. There was a lot of good feeling involved in that. And the reason I let the staff pick is because clients treat them differently. And if they're stressing your staff, then they need to go if you can't turn them around. I may not fire them immediately if it's an otherwise good client, but I'm certainly going to have a conversation with them. And so over time, you learn what works best for you, who are going to be good clients for you and who you just could care less about. And when you have the ability to say no, the quality of your life and the quality of your practice dramatically improves.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's having that crucial conversation with your referral source too, going, you know what, I really appreciate you sending Susie over to us, but it didn't work out. And just so you know, this is my ideal client, and kind of define that for them. So how do you know if
the other thing, yeah, I meant to come back to that, Denise, but you're exactly right. What I ultimately did with the judges is if they would call me first and say, I'm having so-and-so, I would say, well, Judge, you do know that I have a $1,000 consultation fee. Is that something they can do? That at least puts them on notice that you're going to be asking them for it. Occasionally, I will still have a good referral source. Like just this morning, as a matter of fact, a good referral source from a big law firm who sends me quite a bit of high-quality work called and asked if I would speak with one of the lawyers in their firm, a younger lawyer, about an issue, and they really couldn't afford my services. But as a favor, you do it, as long as you do it knowingly. You pick your charities instead of having them pick you. So that's the way we try to run it.
Exactly. And you do want to take care of your good referral sources. So if they ask you for a favor like that from time to time, you definitely want to just kind of step in and do it. So how can you tell if you're not developing, if you don't have great client development? Some of the keys are, the small revenue per case. And if you're experiencing any of these, there's definitely work that needs to be done. A small revenue per case, indicates a lack of selectiveness, like Richard was just talking about, in choosing your clients. It could even be a result from a fear of where the next file is going to come from. So I'm going to take this case on because I don't know where my next case is coming from. So I need to take this. And that's how you end up with those C&D clients. And keep in mind, your C&D client will cost you money in the long run. So you're bringing it on for cash flow, but they'll end up costing you money in time and stress. And because they're the ones who aren't going to pay their bill, or they're going to call you 10 times a day. And so they're going to stress you out and your staff out. If you're dreading the client calls, again, lack of selectiveness there. You might be ignoring the red flags. And it's an indicator that you don't have a system in place to ensure that your marketing is being effective. And so that leads to the next one, which is practicing the threshold law. And taking on the clients, any client that'll come through. If you're having very few referrals, it could be a lack of referral sources. So you haven't identified your referral sources, or you're not staying in touch with your referral sources. You're not staying, it's top of mind awareness, TOMA. So you want to make sure that you're staying top of mind with those sources and making sure that they think of you first. The other indicator is that there's no process to leverage your good relationships with current clients. And so you want to, there's a way to ask for business and it not be cheesy. So if you're wrapping up somebody, with a case, it can be as simple as, if you feel like we've done a good job for you, we've done good work for you, please think of us if you have a friend or family member who might have a need. And it's that simple. It takes 2 seconds. And so you're building that relationship. You could be missing a strategic plan for marketing on the referral-based marketing. And it can be tricky building those relationships, but there's definitely a way to do it and to systematize it so that it becomes very, again, back to profitability and becomes very profitable for you. Definitely have the marketing activities planned and have that on your calendar. Make sure you have two to three a week. And writing it on your calendar is really the only way you're going to do it. If you don't put it in your, it's just like the time management tips that we talked about. If you're not putting the stuff in your calendar, it's not going to happen. So Richard was talking about identifying your ideal client and how do you do that, and identifying your ideal referral source. So you have to create benchmarks for where you want to be. And so who do you want to work with? What are your requirements? And who will be a good partner for you? And then build that dream team. I think, did we skip one, Jeff? I think we skipped the slide. Oh, okay. Okay, maybe I'm out of order. All right. So anyway, this is tracking. So we want to start tracking the referrals and your referral sources and understanding where the great clients are coming from. So because it's impossible to improve on things you don't track. It'll also create accountability for you and your team. Most people, a lot of attorneys I talk with, they'd rather go to the dentist than ask for a referral because it's a pain point for them. So a lot of times this is why they come into coaching, is to create that accountability. And it's kind of like having a gym partner. You have accountability. You're going to meet your friend at the gym, so you're going to show up for the workout. So Richard, talk about the referral tracking system and how you kind of go about doing this.
Thanks, Denise. We created a pretty simple Excel spreadsheet, and it just tracks, first of all, the potential client's name, and then the referral source. That's one of the first questions they always ask is, how did you hear about us? Sometimes people are reluctant, and I've trained them to push just a little bit, to get that information. And then the next column is devoted to whether they set a consultation or not, and then whether they appeared for the consultation, and then finally whether they retained us for representation. And then there'll be another column later on that gets filled in for what the case generated in terms of dollars. And so we can go down to the bottom of each of those columns that deal with telephone calls in, consultations set, and consultations that result in representation, and then track the dollars. So we strive to be above 50% in conversion from phone contact to consultation. Again, our consultation fee screens out a lot of people immediately, but if 50% of the calls I get result in consultations, I know things are going pretty well. And then we try to be better than that in terms of the ones that turn into representation, into real clients. We shoot for 75% of those. I'd actually like to shoot for more, except a lot of people are coming in not because they really need a lawyer at the present time. It's because they're seeking information. And then you begin to see the dollars and who's sending you the really high quality cases. So that's kind of our simple system. I'm sure there's many others.
And it's a great one, and we use what we call a client intake matrix, and I think maybe that's the form you were mentioning. But it's a good way to track, who are your great referral sources, and then use your case management software again to track your referrals. And it's as simple as entering their information in there, just like you would your client, and then learning more about those referral sources and making notes. And so, like here, I have an example. Richard, I know Richard likes really fine scotch, and so that's in our system in case somebody comes in who doesn't know Richard. Then they'll know, if because he's a great referral source for me, they'll know what to send him. And it's great to take notes. So one of the challenges I think some attorneys have is, well, I have referral sources, but then they expect a referral back, and it's really not one for one. It doesn't have to be that. If you get to know your referral sources and understand what they like, it could be as simple as making an introduction for them that's important to another professional, or remembering that their son plays soccer and you see this great article on soccer, and so you send them the article. And again, it gets your name across their desk again, so that top of mind awareness again for you. So every time you can get in front of them in some way that's helping them, or that they know that you were listening during the conversation, you cared enough to send the article, it's just great, simple marketing. All right, Jeff, go ahead to the next slide. So how do you get more business over the next 90 days? The first thing you have to do is set your goals. Where do you want to be in 90 days? And so after this webinar, sit down and identify. I would start by identifying your best referral sources. Then identify the referral sources that you want. And so maybe they're not on your dream team yet. I call it building the dream team. So identify the referral sources that you want. If you could put anybody on your dream team, who would it be? Then create a plan on how to start contacting them and getting in front of them. We use a tool called a 90-day focuser. I know, Richard, you use this. How has using the 90-day focuser helped you bring in more business, create the plan for contact, setting your goals?
It's just like anything else, I guess. You do it with intention, and when you get it written down, it becomes real. We've all had that experience. I'm sure you talk to people, maybe even good friends. Hey, we got to get together. Hey, let's play golf. Let's have lunch. Let's do something. And until it actually hits that calendar, it doesn't get done. So there's two main things I think that make this important. Number one, you have to set aside the time to sit down and think about what those goals are. And then number two, they're in writing, so you have something to refer back to. And one of the things they teach us is to make those goals measurable. So, for example, you don't want to write down improve marketing, because that's not measurable. Well, what do you mean by improvement? Be as specific as you can. Have 3 marketing contacts a week for the next 13 weeks. That would be measurable. How did I do? And track it, as it says here. Track. So have a little plan. You don't have to be overly ambitious. Start with whatever's comfortable, and get it on paper and look at it regularly.
Yeah, as they say, no new habit is ever created if you don't calendar it. So, make sure you're doing that. So some recommendations. We've given you some ways to measure where you are against where you need to be. And so we're hoping that for some of you, today's webinar was a wake-up call for profitability, and what do I need to do to kind of get my life back and make more money and take more time off and do the things that I love to do. And maybe even it could be as much as I'm finally remembering why I became an attorney. It is that tough. You're walking that line of I'm an attorney, but I'm also a business owner. And so how do I create this profitable business? So really the best action you can take is to learn how your unique strengths can be leveraged to increase your profitability. Some of the things that we say when you're marketing, market with authenticity. Make sure that, it's sort of like you're marketing yourself. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. People will pick up on if you're being genuine and true to who you are. And then create that exclusivity. So like Richard said, he sets his fees to a certain level so that people understand this is the client he works with. And you creating that exclusivity is a great marketing tool, because now you've defined people really understand who your A client is and who you want to work with. So again, how do you get the accountability? Well, as Jeff mentioned early in the process today, it starts with getting an accountability partner, and that's where Atticus comes in, and the practice growth diagnostics. We can have the conversation. We'll triage some areas, and it will give you some tips. I mean, you will leave with 3 great tips on how to start improving what you're already working on. And we do have a special offer today for that. So if you guys do register from this webinar, we will send you a free time management for attorneys books, because really time management and marketing are very interconnected. Again, if you don't have good time management, you're not going to either have time to market, or you won't have time to do the business when it's coming in the door. So we'll send you that book as part of the process. And again, it's the 90-day Think About It program. I want to think about it. Maybe I want to make some changes. I don't know. But we want you to take action. Thinking about it is just what we call creative procrastination. You're not going to be any further along if you wait 90 days than you are now. So if you have some questions, obviously we'd love to answer them. Richard, you can talk to that, speak about waiting to do something.
Yeah, I want everybody out there to know I don't work for Atticus. I'm here on this seminar because it has been such a game changer for me, not only in my professional life but in my personal life. Very soon after getting committed to the whole process, I was able to take 6 weeks off and go to Africa. My business not only survived but thrived. I was actually up 5% in revenues over the year before. I do take 175 days a year off. I'm working on a challenge of having 50% of my actual income come from passive activities of my law practice instead of my own labor and sweat. So there's the benefits are so large that procrastinating 90 days is it's a no-brainer. Just take the plunge and do it. When I first got serious with this, Mark made 3 guarantees to me. He says you're going to spend 20% less time in the office, you're going to make 20% more money, and you're going to get excited about your practice again. And I decided at that point that if he could deliver on any one of those promises, it was worth the investment, the financial investment and the time investment that you'll have to make. Well, he delivered on all 3. And I can't even imagine having to do all the work that's really necessary to get where you want to be without the guidance of committed and experienced top-notch coaches that you're going to find here. So there's my commercial for Atticus, but it's only because of the change they make in my life.
And Richard is one of the attorneys who's worked with us, one of our members, who has doubled his revenues. Have you doubled it more than once?
If we talk about revenue, no, I didn't quite double it twice. But if you talk about my personal profitability, what flows to me, yes, I did that. I did that actually 3 times. So it was all good.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us. And Richard, I really appreciate you being here and sharing your insights and how you've become the dominant player in your marketplace. I really appreciate that. I think we have time for questions. Jeff, has anybody typed in? Can you help us with that part?
Yes, so we do have a few questions. One of them that I can answer, will the slides be available after the webinar? Yes, they will. There will be a link available as well as a PDF document of all the slides. So those will be sent out to the attendees. There was a more specific question that I can scroll up here, and I have to apologize a little bit because one of my monitors is being replaced, so I'm trying to hide these names here if you can see these questions. So one of the questions here, consultation fees. I'm a family law estate planning practitioner, 75% plus local attorneys in family law, and almost all in estate planning offer free consultations. Does your recommendation change in these conditions? I currently offer free consultations as I do not want to lose potential business from coming in the door.
You know, I don't know anything about the estate planning aspect of the practice of law. I know, though, that I could spend every day, all day, doing free consultations. But what is that doing for me? If you have a volume practice, a commoditized practice, then I imagine free consultations is the norm and is what you have to do. But if you're looking to elevate the level of your clientele, then they don't expect a free consultation. In fact, you know, my belief has always been that if you don't charge them at least something, they feel like that's what your advice is worth, is nothing. And so I've always tried to keep my consultation fees higher than everybody else's in town, because that creates that exclusivity. I think that's the best answer I can give to that.
That's a perfect answer.
And currently we don't have any other questions popping up here, so I suppose the two of you could carry on for a few minutes, or we could wrap up.
Okay. We'll just, you know, say our goodbyes, and maybe we'll just wait here for a little bit to see if anybody else has any questions to type in. But Richard, again, I would just really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom.
It's my pleasure, Denise. As I say, I think Atticus has done an awful lot for me. If there are any the attendees who would, you know, like to call me and ask a few questions or send me an email, I invite them to do it. It will change your life for the better.
Fantastic. Well, if there aren't any more questions, then we'll wrap up a little bit early today. It's been fun being on here with you guys. With Jeff, I thank you for running everything for us today, and appreciate you guys. And watch for a call from either Jeff or Larry within Atticus. They're going to follow up with you on the webinar to see if some questions come up. It oftentimes when you get off the webinar, it's like, oh, I meant to ask this or I meant to ask that. So definitely take advantage of their call and their time when they do reach out to you, and we'll get the links and everything to you as well. And I guess with that, we'll say goodbye. Yeah.
Well, Denise, I just jump in for one more minute? I don't know the range of people on the call, but if any of you have family law matters in Central Florida, I'd sure appreciate you calling me first.
Absolutely.
That's asking for a referral, Denise.
It's a great example of how to ask for a referral, because you won't get any if you don't ask.
All right. Thank you very much for having me with you today.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.